Welcome to the Florida Real Estate and Entrepreneur Podcast, where we interview the best and the brightest business and real estate leaders. Our mission is to inspire and help 1,000 entrepreneurs to start and succeed in real estate and entrepreneurship. We will give you the exact playbook to succeed in your business through the experience of those who blaze the path. We're bringing the what's working today directly to you. Let's get started. All right. Welcome back to the Florida Real Estate and Entrepreneur Podcast. My guest today is Alex Pardo. He is I feel like I come on here and say everybody's an OG investor, just maybe because I'm not an OG. Like one day I too will be an OG. But when I hear guys investing in real estate since 2005, like pre-crash, I've got an immense amount of respect for that because these folks are, they've experienced a market cycle or two and they just come with a lot of experience. So Alex Hales, starting his investing career in Miami. He was a wholesaler, did 750 plus residential transactions, and he transitioned into self-storage, which we're going to dive deep into today. Alex, welcome to the show, man.
My man, thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be on here and just openly share, man. So appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, I think it's super awesome. So if you could just tell people, maybe fill in some of the gaps of your background, you start investing, how'd you do in all those years that you were investing, and why did you transition to self-storage? Yeah,
so I came from the corporate finance world. I worked for General Electric and their financial management program for a couple of years and quickly realized that I don't think God made me to, work for somebody else. I wanted to create. I wanted to have a certain lifestyle and impact people's lives. So I was backpacking around Europe for 3.5 months. And I mentioned that because when I was on the train on the Eurorail going from city to city, I really just committed to personal development. So I read a lot of the classics and I consumed a bunch of books. And it was in one of those train rides, Adam, that I committed to, like, once I moved back to Miami, I'm going to get involved in real estate. So I ended up getting invited to a marketing for deals boot camp in Atlanta, Georgia. This was October of 2005. And I went to it not knowing a thing about real estate. I thought my experience in real estate was having gone through Carlton Sheets' no money down course. I thought it was like assuming mortgages. Like that's what I thought real estate investing was about. But yeah, man, I think one of the things that has really served me in my life and business is a ready, fire, aim type of mentality and approach. So much so to the point that like I had this binder, and in this binder, they had like different letters and marketing materials. I remember ripping out a pre-foreclosure letter, going to Kinko's at the time and photocopying about 300 pre-foreclosure letters. I'm not joking. And I would sit at my parents' kitchen table and I would hand address envelopes and stuff these pre-foreclosure letters that had the 3-ring black holes from the photocopy. And I sent out my first direct mail campaign about 2.5-ish months later. I ended up closing my first deal, which was a short sale, believe it or not. And we ended up making $44,000 on that deal, which I split with a buddy of mine. And dude, that was January of 2005 that I closed that deal and haven't looked back, man. So
yeah, that is incredible. So who held this event? Is this like a
Dave Lindahl?
Who is it?
I don't know if you know the name Dave Lindahl. He's he's big in multifamily and apartments. I think he's still out there doing it. But he held an event called Marketing for Deals, and it was exactly that. It's like, hey, how do you market to motivated sellers, basically? So
yeah, that's incredible. Yeah, Dave Lindahl, I read his book. He wrote a book on multifamily. I read his book about 3 years ago.
Yep.
So that's crazy. So that guy came from residential too. I didn't know that. Okay, so you take the red pill and you decide that this real estate thing's for you. You get some education, you do your first deal, you make 40,000 plus, which, it's a lot of money, especially in 2005. Your mental state must have been like, okay, game on. This is how this is going to go.
Dude, my salary at the time was either 48 or 50 grand. It wasn't more than 50. So it was like, and now granted, I split that deal, but my mindset was, wait, and here's the crazy thing. I then thought that every deal moving forward was going to be 40 plus, and I was met with reality, and like the next 6 deals were like under 10 grand, but that's neither here nor there.
So did you wholesale or flip that deal?
No, I wholesaled it. I 100%. So here's the irony, brother. I got into real estate because I wanted cash flow and time freedom. Like I remember distinctly thinking, reading Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I'm like, I want to experience the benefits of appreciation and depreciation and all these things. but yet I found myself playing the wrong game for 15 years. Now I'm super grateful for all the money we made wholesaling, but it was a transactional business. And the mistake that I made was that I didn't cherry pick deals. Like I didn't take this high active earned income and put it into cash flow producing assets. So yeah, I mean, I've done my fair share of fix and flips, but pretty much 85-90% of the deals we did was wholesaling, just churning every single month. And I experienced what a lot of wholesalers experience, which was this income roller coaster. I remember having boom months, 6-figure months, and then the next month it's like a goose egg. And then it's like
a goose egg, but you also spent money on marketing.
100%. Yeah. So that's the thing, right? So I started off as a one-man show for 5 years. And then I read Tim Ferriss' 4-Hour Workweek, hired a VA in India for $9 an hour. I'll never forget not having a game plan for this person. And I said to myself, I want to start hiring people and building a business, right? So I hired an acquisition manager and a dispo, and I did this whole thing, right? And then in 2019, I realized that my overhead was between 40 and 44,000 bucks a month. We were sending out 35-ish thousand postcards a month consistently, right? I had implemented EOS and the team and the office and the whole nine. And I saw my tax return from 2006. Brother, it was embarrassing to admit I made more money. In 2006, my first year in business by myself, I netted more than I did in 2019 with a team of 9 people. And I'm
why was that? Like certainly it can't just be the business model. What were the things?
Yeah, it's a lot of mistakes I made. So it's all inward. Like there's no excuse pointing or anything like that. Like, first of all, I took on more expenses. Like we grew too fast and we were spending too much money in way too many different areas, right? From a marketing perspective, from the compensation package that I had for my team members was broken, right? I was paying them too much and not realizing that like I wasn't leaving myself enough of a profit margin. And then I just had overhead that I didn't need. Like there was just like monthly expenses, and it might not sound like much, but it adds up. And looking back now, I just wasn't being a good steward of the money. And from an entrepreneur, like I wasn't keeping an eye. Like I was big on KPIs in the wholesaling business, but yet I wasn't big on like the financials, the P&L, the balance sheet, and those types of things. And it cost me, man. Like I would remember thinking to myself, like, okay, we just had a 6-figure month. Like, where's the money going? Like what? And so, brother, I made a lot of mistakes. I openly admit that, but I'm grateful for it because, man, it taught me a lot, and I've learned a lot from those experiences.
Okay, so before we dive into the transition to self-storage, because I think that's a fascinating model in and of itself. What happened to your business in 2007, 8, 9, and 10?
I was thriving until the market crashed. And so I feel like this has become the episode of like me sharing like how I've messed up in so many different ways, but like, it's just, that's part of my story, man. And so, I was doing very well. And in 2007, I thought it was a genius idea to get involved in my first fix and flip. And so between myself and a partner, we took down a property in Las Olas in the Fort Lauderdale area for $505,000. And based on the comps, and we figured it needed 75 to 100 grand, and we thought we could sell it for 750, 760, somewhere in that range. And the market crashed. Long story short, between myself and a partner, we lost $102,000. So I lost $51,000. Now, I've done a lot of deals throughout the years, and people sometimes ask me like, what's the best deal you've ever done? And I always reference that one. And then people look at me like I'm insane. I'm like, how can losing 51 grand be the best deal? Well, up until that point, I always saw coaches and mentors as an expense. Now I know they're an investment. And ever since that moment to this day, I've never gone a month where I haven't been personally paying and working with a coach. And I told myself, I'm like, if I would have had somebody in my corner that was just a few steps ahead of me, I would have never gotten involved in that deal. So, during that time, so 2008 came, 2009, I'm in my apartment in Miami, and I get a letter from the IRS that's about 1/2 inch thick with a green sticker, and it says certified mail. And when something, like you don't know what's behind the wall or an envelope or something, but you're like, is this not good? brother, I'm getting like butterflies in my stomach because I remember the feeling. I open up this envelope, and I hadn't filed. Apparently, I didn't know this at the time. I hadn't filed my 2006, 7, and 8 taxes.
Oh,
mind you, I did pretty well. I made 6 figures each of those years, so I owed, I think it was like $126,000 to the IRS. Mind you, the crash had just happened. I was doing deals, but like here and there, very inconsistent. Not enough to like make a living. And man, like that took me down a journey where I thought I was going to be filing BK. I even met with a bankruptcy attorney, and I remember the bankruptcy attorney telling me like, you have to do this because you have no choice. You're not going to be able to like pay this thing off. And he gave me a gift. He didn't know that like I'm the type of dude that like when you challenge me, like I'll figure out a way. And so I left his office, didn't file BK, and within like a 36 to 40 month period, paid off everything I owed to the IRS, paid off a bunch of credit card debt, and like made a decision like that's not going to happen to me again.
That's incredible, man. Yeah, I mean, obviously you're exposing and being vulnerable on some of the challenges over the time, but that was a challenging time, one. And two, it actually makes me more nervous to talk to somebody who's had nothing but success stories, right? Because
yeah,
I personally just lost like 90 grand on a flip, like
wow.
Literally last month. I've lost on 2 ever, and we've done hundreds, 1,000, so
yeah,
I'll take those odds all day. But my lender, who's also a real estate investor and a good friend and mentor of mine, he said to me like, hey man, that's how you're gaining experience. That's like how you made it. Like, I don't know a good investor who hasn't like lost on like 1 or 2, right? And he was obviously like not beating me up on anything about it, but he got paid every penny to include his interest. But that's like part of the process. You are not going to win 100% of the time. I don't care what anybody says. You will not.
That's right. And if you do win 100% of the time, I might argue that you're just not playing the game at a level that you probably could be. And that doesn't necessarily mean bigger per se. But yeah, look, man, I get suspicious when I hear of just rainbows and unicorn stories, because I know that in the world of entrepreneurship and life in general, like that's not the way it works. Like, you're going to take some L's. You're going to have some setbacks, and that's okay. It's like, you, as cliche as it sounds, man, you just use those experiences to like Monday morning quarterback it, right? Like, okay, where did I go wrong? What can I learn from this experience? And then you just get better and you keep growing from there.
Absolutely. Okay. So you go on, obviously the crash happens. You get out from underneath that. You continue to do deals. At some point you decide, all right, I'm going to pivot. I see a different opportunity. I like this opportunity better. I need to buy assets. Talk to me about that transition. I mean, you said 2019, which was still a really great time for wholesaling. In fact, the next like 3, 4, 5 years were maybe the heyday of wholesaling.
Yep. You know what is crazy? I have friends that still wholesale to this day in like the South Florida area that I'm still cool with. And sometimes I get asked, like, do you regret it? Like, you left in 2020. Like, I literally left right after COVID. So COVID came. I had mentally decided I'm going to like unwind this business. I just hadn't like publicly made the decision. I hadn't notified my team. When COVID came, it was a blessing in disguise. So from the moment COVID came, which was like, I don't know, March 12th, 13th, 2020, I was completely shut down by June, intentionally. And we were still doing deals every month. So it was a profitable business, even though it was inconsistent, but I shut it down 2020. And yeah, man, like, so I started acquiring single family rentals in 2018 is when I told my wife, I'm like, hey, this wholesaling thing, it's great, but it's inconsistent. It's a transactional business. We need to start like shoveling money into these assets. So I bought a handful of rentals in Cleveland, Ohio. Now, mind you, I live in Miami, so got a property manager in place. I'm like, this is my genius plan. I'm going to buy a handful of rentals a year. I'll build this portfolio. And then I got slapped in the face with reality that rentals is anything but passive. And one furnace or one roof or one work order, and all of a sudden, like a chunk of your cash flow for the year's gone. And so anyways, I realized like, hey, I don't think I want to build a massive rental portfolio. Like, I think there's a better way. I was coaching somebody in 2019 that owned a storage facility. And I just got an inside look into the asset class. He had time freedom. He had cash flow. He didn't have any employees. He didn't have overhead. Like the facility has overhead, but like his business had very little overhead. He wasn't dealing with tenants and toilets and trash. And I'm like, what's going on here? Like this thing is like, this asset class has been right under my nose. And then I really started digging deep into storage. And I came across statistics like storage has the lowest default rate of any commercial asset class. The operating expense ratio in storage is less than most other commercial asset classes. The margins are bigger. You don't have the tenants and the toilets, and you have all these profit centers. I could go on and on, but I'm like, I need to get into storage. So when I shut down the wholesaling business, I took some time off. We were talking before the podcast. We love to travel. And so December of 2020, I planted my flag on storage. I said, I'm going to commit to this asset class. So I'll kind of pause there, but yeah.
Yeah, no. So that's incredible. Yeah. You know, for a lot of people, that time 2020 was a big decision point for people to keep going. They didn't know what was going to happen. I remember a lot of investors were nervous because their whole business needed like to be in people's houses, and then they were transitioning their business to virtual. Some people were already virtual, and a lot was up in the air. So that's like a really good natural transition point. You decided obviously to go to self-storage. What was it specifically? I mean, I know storage is interesting too, because if you went through the crash and you kind of look back at the economics of storage in the crash, all those people who lost their houses didn't lose their stuff.
Right.
Storage was actually booming because they couldn't afford their $2,000-$3,000 a month house payment, but they could afford their $100 a month storage unit.
Well, you just nailed it, Adam. So storage, think about what storage unit costs to rent, right? Anywhere on average between $50 and $350, depending on the size. And what I have experienced in storage, because the average length of stay for our customers is just under 3 years. When people move their stuff into a storage unit, they pay month after month after month, and it's a very sticky product. So think about the pain of disconnect. Like if you and I moved our stuff into a 10 by 20, you're not going to move out in a month. Like you have to rent a truck and you got to get a moving company. You got to bother friends and family and take a whole weekend. Like it's a process. And think about just like Americans tend to consume a bunch of stuff. Like, I don't know about you, but like if you're like, and my wife is always ordering stuff on Amazon. We got 4, 5, 6 packages a day. I'm like, what is this stuff? Like, and so people are buying stuff, and generally speaking, they're attached to things. And so when the economy is doing well, people are buying things. They either upgrade their lifestyle in their homes, but they also sometimes rent storage. And what happens in an uncertain market or in a down market? People downsize, but they don't want to get rid of their stuff, so they go put it in storage at $50 to $300 a month. So I love that aspect of storage. And then the kicker for me is that storage is a business. It just happens to have the benefits of real estate. Yeah. It's a real legit business, and it comes with all those benefits that we love about real estate.
Yeah. And I also like the fact that from a business operations perspective, and given 2024 and how everything's digitized, like you don't necessarily need staff there. Everything can be keypads and electronic and Wi-Fi enabled. So that does make it really, really attractive. So I have heard though that the storage space is compressed in terms of margin available, or it's harder to acquire an asset today for the right price, obviously.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
What are you seeing today in the storage space? Because I know you help a whole lot of people get in their first storage deal. So how are we overcoming that?
For sure. In full transparency, Adam, you're 100% right. Like the storage market 2 to 3 years ago, like during COVID, everything was booming. Occupancy was through the roof. Like any facility you bought today, a year later was worth significantly more. Now things have come back to what a normal should be. Right. And so, I think you're right in that it's more challenging to find the right opportunities. But as with anything, there's always opportunity out there. We just have to go through more deals in order to get to the right one. Like we have to underwrite more. We have to have more conversations with sellers. So, back in the day, 2 years ago, you might send out 3, 4, 500 letters and get a deal from a small campaign like that. Now you just have to do more things and you have to look at more opportunities. But the cool thing about storage is that the conversations with these owners, because they're business owners, they're not emotionally attached to these assets. It's much easier. And many of them, not all, but many of them have an appetite for seller financing, which is a tool that I love in storage. All the skill sets that I acquired in my single family wholesaling days, like every single one of those has translated nicely over to storage. I do the same marketing to get my deals, right? Which is primarily direct mail, cold calling, broker and wholesaler relationships. Like that's pretty much my honey hole to get these deals, which is exactly what I did in single family, plus a bunch of other stuff. But yeah, no, look, there's over 30,000 mom and pop operated storage facilities in the country. So one of the things I like is that there's not as much competition as there is in the single family space. Now, granted, to be fair, obviously there's significantly more homes than there are storage facilities. But we look for very specific types of facilities, mom and pop operated storage facilities in secondary and rural markets.
Yeah. What's the sweet spot in terms of units at one of these, right? Because you drive down some rural area, you might see 2 or 3 rows, can't be more than 30, 40 units.
Yeah.
Is it like having 100 of these things kind of minimum gives you enough cash flow? Like what are the sweet spots on these things? What kind of entry prices are we looking at too?
We don't look at storage, at least I don't, in terms of number of units. We look at it in terms of net rentable square footage. So when I got into storage, like one of the things I realized is that it takes just as much time, energy, and effort to work on a small deal as it does to work on a big deal. So when I got into storage, I had my sights set on 20,000 net rentable square feet and up. So the facilities I've bought, I haven't bought anything less than 24,000 square feet. To your point, it's not that getting involved in a smaller deal, because I have friends that have bought 8, 9, 10, 12,000 square foot facilities that have less than 100 units, and they've done well with them. But I like being able to buy a facility large enough that I can plug in a third-party management company because the revenue can justify it. And we run what's called an unmanned model. So I don't have an employee in the office. The management company manages the boots on the ground. And that gives me the time freedom. Like when I had my storage portfolio of, it was 870 days ago, I had 838 units. In the last 60 days, I've sold 2 facilities. But that portfolio of 3 facilities, maybe I would spend an hour and a half, at most 2 hours a week, right? Like managing that portfolio. That's because I had third-party management in place. If you go smaller and the revenue can't justify third-party management, then you're the one that has to manage the boots on the ground. And that just takes a little bit more time.
Yeah. What is so you don't have any toilets. You do kind of have tenants. What happens when somebody doesn't pay their bills? And
yeah, good question. So we have customers. I wouldn't say they're tenants. The great thing about storage is instead of like, you know how in single family, if somebody doesn't pay, you have to go through like an eviction process or an ejectment if they don't have a lease. In storage, it's called Lien Laws, which means that depending on where the facility is located, generally speaking, between 60 and 70 days, as long as we like dot our I's and cross our T's in terms of like putting a notice in the paper, emailing them, contacting them, we just auction off their stuff, which generates a little bit of income. And then we do a unit, clean out, and then we put the unit back online to rent. So on average, call it 2 months from the moment somebody doesn't pay to the moment that we can auction off their stuff and then get it back online so that we can rent it. So it's a pretty quick turnaround.
Oh, that's incredible. Yeah. I think the storage model is obviously fascinating just for the low overhead, the kind of time freedom it provides you. I think it's really cool. So you went into this space and you're obviously a great teacher. You've helped people learn single family stuff, and now you're helping people to learn about how to get their first storage unit. Talk to me about what you're doing to help folks do that.
Yeah, man. So I've been coaching people since 2012, and I realized that I get a lot of joy and fulfillment from impacting people's lives. Like to be honest with you, and I don't want to shoot myself in the foot here. Like I'm not passionate about real estate. I enjoy it. I'm pretty good at it, but to me, it's more of a vehicle that allows me to pour into people. So our Storage Wins coaching program is all designed to help people acquire their first cash flowing storage facility within 6 to 12 months. And every single facility I've ever bought, I haven't used any of my own money. The biggest limiting belief that people have about getting involved in storage or commercial in general is this belief that they need to have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. And I'm not saying you don't need capital. It just doesn't have to be yours. There's a lot of different ways to skin this cat. So yeah, man, I'm just focused on getting our clients results and helping people get involved in storage without it being a shiny object, because it can go complement what people are doing in the single family business.
Yeah, I love that. You know, it's really fascinating to me. So I buy commercial apartments. Like we still wholesale today, believe it or not. We still do 60, 80 deals a year. We love the business. We buy rentals, and we've got all the exit strategies available to us. I hate flipping. I try never to flip a house if I don't have to. It's like, it's the worst. Like I'm just not personally built for that. But we buy apartments too. I think what I see in our industry, you know, we've got lots of friends coaching and all kinds of stuff. Real estate factually is the most powerful wealth building vehicle there is. It's a great vehicle. But what I see is you're like either in one camp or the other. And I think we lose sight of the diversity in the space. Like flipping and wholesaling is an active business. It is very transactional, and it can be very powerful in terms of creating a lot of active income. Like you can make hundreds, if not millions of dollars, legitimately net that kind of money, and people do it. What's important though is you take that money and if you don't ever put it into assets, you will never become wealthy. And that's where I see the disconnect in our industry, where it's like, I do this. It's like, yeah, okay, so you flip houses, great. In order to what? Like, what are you doing with that capital? Because if I took myself out of this crazy entrepreneur space and I'm just back in a regular old W-2 working corporate or whatever it is, I'm in a job making active income, and I'm probably contributing to a 401k, and that's my wealth building vehicle. If you're a real estate flipper, wholesaler, you should also be buying assets. That is your wealth building vehicle. That is where your expertise lies. So I think that, you know, if you're flipping houses, if you're wholesaling houses, you can also buy self-storage. You can also buy or invest as a limited partner in self-storage or apartments or whatever the vehicle is.
Adam, you nailed it. People don't have to be all things to all parts of a commercial deal. Like, as you just mentioned, like if you're good at raising capital, you can carve out a piece of these deals by contributing and bringing that value to the table. Maybe you're a good marketer and you know how to generate leads. Like you can carve out a piece of these deals by generating leads that somebody like me or one of my clients ends up taking to the finish line. Or maybe you're a good connector. One of the things I take my clients through is an exercise where I help them get clear, and we take inventory of their assets, their resources, and their skill sets. And oftentimes it's eye-popping to them because they haven't taken the time to like really get clear on like what they have as far as resources. And then I help them craft a plan to get in this business based on their goals and based on those resources. So what I just shared is something that anyone can take and implement. It's not a complicated exercise, but maybe you don't want to like be the operator or do all this, but you're good at this. Well, figure out how you can leverage that to carve out a piece of a multifamily deal or a storage deal. Am I wrong?
No, you're spot on. In fact, we saw this, and like we have the 7-figure flipping community, and we at one point, you know, 3 or 4 years ago, we launched 7-figure multifamily. And what we saw was a lot of flippers try to ascend into commercial multifamily. And they just, a lot of them realized like, man, I was actually really good at making active income flipping. Maybe I should just be a limited partner, because the commercial game is different. It is a total team sport, by the way. And you need to be all the chains in the link from capital raising to asset management to operations need to be very good. Like everybody has to be good at what they do. Cause like I can come into your storage deal and raise $1 zillion, but then I got to hand it off to you depending on that whole time, 5, 7, 10 years, whatever it is. And we have to execute the business plan. So yeah, there are different ways to get involved in commercial storage, apartments, whatever it is, based on skill sets. The only thing I would tell people is to make sure the team you get in with, that you work with, the operators you work with, or the capital raisers you work with are aligned with your core values and are good operators.
100%.
That is so critical when you get into the space.
Adam, I'll take it a step further. I always underwrite, in quotes, the operator before I even look at the deal, because it doesn't matter how great the deal is. If there's not an alignment of trust and values, and if it's not an operator that's competent, that has a proven track record or knows what they're doing, doesn't matter how great the deal is.
No. And I've never seen a bad pro forma. I've never seen a bad.
You know what? That's a great point. I haven't quite heard it put that way, but you're 100. A pro forma is meant to show you like what this could be, like the shiny, you're 100% right.
Yeah. Nobody's like, hey, do you want to invest in my below average deal? Check out this pro forma. Yeah. Those PPMs all look really, really good. But it's highly lucrative, and what's cool is it is a team sport, to your point. And you got to get behind an asset class that you believe in too. So if you like self-storage, if you like the reasons why it's such a strong asset class, like it's close to being recession proof. People don't want to get rid of their stuff. They're always going to put stuff in storage. It's not going anywhere. In fact, my wife is about to go get a storage unit. I guarantee you that thing is never going to default, no matter how broke I am, because all her stuff is in there.
You and I are going to connect in a year or two, and you're probably going to still be paying that monthly bill.
100%, no doubt about it. I'm like, we haven't even been there in 12 months. So we just need to get rid of that stuff. So that's awesome, man. So how, if people are listening to this and they're like, you know what, I'm considering going into storage, what would you recommend they do? How can they find you and what you guys have going on, your program? How can you help them?
Yeah, man. I appreciate the opportunity to come on here and share openly, Adam. There's a couple different ways. So no strings attached. If I have some valuable resources, like some training and like the direct mail letter I use to have gotten my deals, and I have a purchase and sale contract. So there's a Dropbox that has a bunch of like resources. Like, again, no strings attached. If you guys text me the word storage and then just put Adam's name in parentheses, that way I know you came from the show. I'll have my assistant text you a link where you guys can download these and just use the training and some of the resources. 305-318-6213. 305-318-6213. And then if you want to have a conversation about potentially how you can get involved in storage, head over to www.storagewins.com, WINS, storagewins.com. And just have a brief conversation and ultimately just ask you a few questions and tell you about the program and see if it's a fit.
Dude, that's so cool, man. Yeah, it's awesome. And I agree with you too. Like, coaching is an investment. I've been a part of communities ever since I started taking it serious, and I'm grateful for that because I've had a lot. I've probably saved myself from losing way, way, way more money just because I have basically bumpers on. Like, I got coaches that'll be like, don't do that. That's a terrible idea. So, it's these things like this with good quality people like you are like extremely, extremely valuable, and you can go a lot faster. You can get there a lot quicker than if you're fumbling around by yourself. That's what I found to be true. I went really fast and did hundreds of deals because I had coaches. Not because I'm smart, because obviously everybody listening to this knows I'm just a dumb Marine. But
by the way, thank you for your service, Adam.
Dude, yeah, my pleasure. Absolute honor.